Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Okay, so hey, there are times when we all could use a little extra help and support in our lives. Whether there's something you're struggling with or just seeking connection with other people who understand what it's like to be in your situation, Inovia Behavioral Health can help. Inovia is a subscription-based organization that provides unlimited access to a wide variety of educational, experiential, and therapeutic support groups that are led by live expert facilitators. Now, you can get 20% off your membership with the discount code Cookbook20 when you subscribe. Check it out today at inoviabh.com. Inovia, feel better. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Cookbook. I'm your guest, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm super excited about my guest today. We've met a few times, and she is a lovely human, and she's also really cool. What she does is really cool. So I'm going to bring her bio, or read her bio, and bring her on. Okay, so Dr. Carrie is a psychologist turned speaker and author. She uses her 21 years of experience in private practice, treating anxiety and trauma to bring great psychological principles to teach self-empowerment. That's pretty huge. She focuses on helping people improve their flexibility about life's inevitable ups and downs instead of railing against reality and waiting for happiness to arrive at their doorstep. And nowadays, that is so important. I can't wait to get into this. On a personal note, Dr. Carrie takes care to create a life she loves and is especially fond of baking, reading, hanging with her family, and hiking. Goal is 275 miles this year. Oh man, okay, that's impressive. So without further ado, let's meet Dr. Carrie. 275 miles?
That's the goal. So it's a big number, but if you break it down into a couple of hikes a week, then the next thing you know, you've gotten it. So for example, this week, I'll probably do 8 miles, maybe 10, because I'm going to do an after work hike tomorrow night, and that's 3 miles, and then doing a 5 or 6 miler on Friday.
Wow.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, there's 52 weeks in a year. If you do 10 miles a week, that's 520 miles.
Exactly. So,
okay.
And there's several months of the year in Colorado that hiking isn't really the right sport to choose. So hiking season is kind of just started.
You know, unless you're my client, Michelle Stowe, who does like ski walking or whatever, and like she goes to the highest summit. Oh my God, she's amazing. She sent pictures, and it was like she could touch the stars. It was amazing. So yeah, I love all you active people, because the only time that I feel active is when people are saying, you know, hey, I listen to the podcast when I'm working out, and I'm like, great, I feel like I'm working out with them. So there's my workout for the week.
That's awesome.
So there is so much to you, and I want to get to all of this, and I lost there we are. So one of the things you wanted to talk about was the concept of, well, before we do that, tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the other stuff. But tell the audience about who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, I've been in private practice for 21 years. It'll be 22 in November. I'm not sure how that math adds, but it does. And I just really enjoy helping people. So, and I'm pretty committed to living a life that I really like. And so the opportunity as a job to help other people live a life that they like is pretty much, it's like the best job ever. So I really enjoy what I do. I've specialized for a long time in treating anxiety and trauma. And several years ago, I decided I really wanted to reach more people at a time. So as honorable and amazing as it is for me to be sitting across from one other person in individual therapy, there's some ideas that I have that it's like, I might as well tell 100 people at a time instead of just one person at a time. So I wrote a book and got it published almost exactly a year ago, and have also been doing podcasts and speaking gigs. And it's just been a really fun adjunct to my individual therapy practice.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. So 22 years ago, we'll get into that a little later, but so tell us about the concept of psychological flexibility. It says basically it means flexing with reality and figuring out your next best move, but can you expand on that a little bit?
So I don't know if you're the type of person who likes things to go the way that you want things to go, right? But most of us are that kind of person where when we set up kind of a life formula where A plus B equals C, the life that we expect, right? Except we often have forgotten that there is an unknown twisting X factor that gets thrown into the life formula. So the life formula is actually A plus B plus unknown factor X that we often don't have control over, right, that equals C, the life that we get, right? And hopefully the life that we get and the life that we want are proximate, right? That they're related to each other. But most of the time, we can't count on just making the assumption that hard work and what we want and identifying a goal means that we're actually going to get that exact outcome. Life has a habit of being a little bit more surprising than that. And psychological flexibility is the concept of really dealing with the reality that you have and taking a look at what's working well and what isn't working so well, and then moving towards what you want by doing more of what works well and less of what doesn't work so well.
So it's like pivoting. And I think that,
yes,
pre-COVID, a lot of people, I don't think were able to adapt to that. I think that it's kind of fascinating because yes, people have, so I'm very flexible myself, like, because I never know what the hell life is going to throw at us. So I'm just like, okay, here we go. Like if you saw my post in the Dames today about forgetting about my branding and everything.
I did. And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. But it was crazy because, with everything that happened with my family last week, I completely and utterly spaced it. And then last night it was like, oh shit, we're doing a live branding tomorrow. Crap. And, so it was one of those, and I just kind of went, you know what? It happens. And like 5 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, I would have been like, oh my God, how could I forget this? And just like literally, taking the proverbial stick and beating myself.
Right.
But I think, and that's like pre-COVID, I think what COVID did with that was people expected their lives to be a certain way. And then this thing, this behemoth, thing comes in and changes everything.
Yeah.
And you had to make these pivots, and either you did and you could get along and move forward, or you didn't and you got stuck. So I think that this is so timely, especially the people that were like, oh, my life is going to go like this. And now it's like, not so much.
Right. And the trick to psychological flexibility is a concept called acceptance. And we've confused what acceptance is. So a lot of times folks think that acceptance is the same as approving of something or liking something. And in this context, acceptance is quite literally just acknowledging what is actually happening, right? And then from my perspective, the next thing to focus on is to notice the emotions that come up around it. And from there, then you can take a look at what your options are, and then you can figure out what your next best move is.
That's awesome.
So when I think about early in COVID, we had all sorts of trips planned, including a trip to Japan that we had been planning for 2 years. And my word of the year, I know it's cheesy, but sometimes it's helpful. So sometimes I do a word of the year. And that year I had done one. And the word was adventure. And I was looking to achieve adventure by traveling. And as we're on our trip, on a ski trip in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the world is shutting down. We're trying to figure out if we're even going to be able to get out of the state and get across the border back to Colorado. And all of a sudden, the word adventure was needed to be reconfigured because our trip to Japan didn't happen. Right. Neither did a lot of other things, right? And so the adventure then became something as simple as, and this is a piece of why I totally want it on your podcast. I'm like, I love to cook, right? So the adventure became, what funky new thing am I going to make this week? Right?
I love that.
Let's try a new recipe. Let's, and so the adventure became, how do we work with the reality that we have, which is that things that were really important to us that we had planned for years weren't going to happen. And so that acceptance meant literally just acknowledging this was our plan. This is what we wanted. We're really bummed out about it. And okay, next, right? What's our next option?
Right.
What's our next best move?
I love that. It was funny because I turned 60 during COVID, and I was like,
happy birthday.
Well, that was a few years ago, but it was like, I had these plans. I wanted to do something big. It was a big number. Like I made it. When I was younger, I didn't think I was going to make it past 40. Never mind hit 60. So that's another story. But yeah, everybody's like, I was homeless when I was 19. I had a lot of stuff, that went on. Like when I look at, I'm so proud of who I've become because of where I've come from.
Yeah.
But regardless, and I was really bummed because not only couldn't we go anywhere, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't even get a cake.
Oh no.
We didn't have a cake. We didn't, my wife couldn't go out and get a card. We could, right. It was craziness. So I was like, this really sucks, but then I was like, but we're alive. We're not sick. We're together. We're not in a hospital, not able to say goodbye to each other. So there were a lot of pieces of gratitude that came in, and I thank my mindfulness coach for that. She's was amazing, or is amazing. I still use her. And it was like, okay, here we are. So now what? And for me, she's an essential worker, so she was out every day.
Yep.
And for me, I was not. And I just, grew relationships online, networked online, met amazing people online. And that's how my business, tripled last year. I mean, it all came from that. And it's almost like making lemonade out of lemons.
Right. Kind of. And working with what you do have, right? Like this idea of mileage goals came up a couple of years ago when I was turning 50. And in the beginning, it was one of those things where I did the same 2 hikes, right? Because the request was not to be traveling really far and all that kind of stuff. In Colorado, I think we had a substantially larger amount of freedom than a lot of other places in the country. I guess I was considered an essential worker. I never left my office. But I was like, I'm going to try and just hike 50 times for my 50th birthday. And
wow.
Then the next year it was like, well, let's try for 250 miles. And then this year it's like, hey, let's try for 275. So, and it doesn't actually matter if you meet the goal or not. It's the intention to give it a shot that I think makes a lot of the difference. And that's a big piece of acceptance is, well, here's what I have to work with. What do I want to try? Right? Like what options do I have?
See, I love that. It's the intention, because I think intention is 9/10 of the battle.
Yeah.
If we're not intentional about what we do, we're probably not going to make it the way that we think we're going to. Mm-hmm. And a lot a lot of my last year has been very intentional. All of the moves that I've made, all of the strategic and intentional. I think when you put strategy and intention together, you have like a winning combination.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
So you have a book out.
I do. I have it right here. I'll show you what it looks like. I need glasses now.
Did you send it to me? Is that what you sent to me?
I think that is what yeah, I sent you one. Here's what it looks like.
You sent me that, and I haven't. Oh, okay. That's what's in there. Awesome. Okay.
So the cool thing about this book is that it's the book that my clients asked me to write because they were really tired of 300-page self-help books that spent 290 pages on the problem and 10 seconds on the solution. And so this book, you actually don't have to read front to back. You just open it to, let's see tactic number 43. You just open it to any page and the 2-page spread is the tip.
I have not opened this yet, and because I was away. Oh, and you put a little note on there.
Of course.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah.
And
there's 10 different chapters, so it gives you information about a variety of different problems that you might field. But for each problem, like there's a chapter on anxiety, there's a chapter on relationships, there's a chapter on communication. Each chapter has around 10 tips of try this, and all of the tips are things. They are tactics and strategies that I've been using in the last 20 years in my private practice with folks, so we know for sure that they work. And, fun, easy to implement, very low on the pressure to, this is not a book that you have to work at. It's literally a book that's like, hey, my boss is being a jerk. Well, flip to the chapter on communication and let's see Let's see if one of the 10 might be helpful with your boss who's a jerk.
Or you can do what I did, and how fitting. You can see what.
Which one did you get?
Laughter.
Oh yeah, that's so true.
And it's so funny because again, intention, right? I pick cards every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 decks. They're oracle cards, so
awesome.
I get them into the woo-woo. And I have crystals everywhere and all the things. But I pick 2 cards every day. Okay, almost every day. I try to do it every day.
Okay.
And I always say, what does Iris need today? And the ones that I picked today were rejoice and celebration, and you are protected. And I bring that up because, I open up the book and it's like laughter.
And it's laughter.
And it's laughter, And I have my vision board here, and I have like and it's on all of my screens so that, I see everything. What I love about this, and I'm going to grab it again because I literally just opened it up, but, and I opened it up to this page. Maybe you should just try doing it just like
a card.
Is that
Invest
crazy?
in a spiritual practice. And that's one of the tips. So at the end of several of the chapters, almost every chapter, is what I call a going deeper tip. So most of the tips are things that literally you can pick up, read it in the moment, and try it right then. And then there's a few things that are habits that I would encourage you to develop over a longer period of time, or that would take longer to apply. And investing in a spiritual practice is one of the going deeper tips.
Drink a glass of water upside down if you must. I love that. Well, my mom that's how I used to get rid of my hiccups.
Exactly. That's the story that's there.
And drinking. This is, okay, folks. So I literally just opened this up. Oh, and there's like your card is in here. Was that intentional? Because this is where it was.
Yes.
Okay. I love it. It says, upgrade me to a bigger stove.
And the grammar is purposefully incorrect in that, partially to catch your attention and partially because it's all about upgrading yourself.
Yes.
And there's a whole this is, I think, another self-help tip is this idea of like, you have a stove and you have 4 burners, and your 4 burners are self-work, family, and I don't remember what the other one was. And I remember hearing this and liking the concept, especially because I like to cook, and also feeling like 4 burners is not enough. Like, clearly this was not written by a woman who is,
who actually
trying to do all of the things. So I've decided that the stove is more like that, like badass big Viking stove with the 6 burners,
Yes.
right? Like the 4, and then the griddle or the extra burners in the middle. But the concept is you can only pay attention at like high level alert to a few things at a time. And so you want to think about, what are you paying most close attention to, and what's kind of on the back burner, and what's something that's off to the side that at some point you want to bring in, but right now might not be the right time. So again, it's this notion of intentionality. So a lot of my work is about how do we increase intention, and how do we assess what's going on? And then also, how do we manage the emotions that are coming up? Because I think a big mistake that a lot of us make is it's like, there's an emotion, I should do something about that emotion immediately. And it's more like, hey, there's an emotion. What's the information it's trying to give me?
Right.
What do I want to do about it? What are my options? Instead of just instant, right? Trigger to explosion kind of
Right.
thing.
Right. And I love the because you are not broken, but life gets tricky sometimes. This is so good. I'm totally going to read this. I'm sorry I didn't open it sooner. I didn't know what it was that you sent me, and then I was like, oh.
I think it's really beautiful that you opened it right now. That's awesome.
And now I'm going to, and you know what I love? I love the colors first off. And I love the concept that it's not, you don't have to sit and read the whole thing, that you could just read what you need. Ooh, read what you need. There we go.
Read what you need. And it's predicated on the concept, because I'm really fairly exhausted with self-help these days, because self-help seems to be just putting this drumbeat that we are broken and we should really pay attention to how we're broken. And then we should talk about how we're broken. And like, holy cow, folks, like everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. This should surprise no one. Please identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. Boost your strengths, work on your weaknesses if you can, or just call uncle on a couple of them, right? But for the most part, stop it already with the problem focus. It's exhausting and it's no fun. And life is supposed to be more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's like Lindsay Hotmeyer said, I love her like a lot. She said, not everybody has trauma, or not everybody came from trauma. And I get that. Although I do believe that there was some pivotal point in everybody's youth, I don't care who you are, that shapes who you become.
Oh my gosh, of course. And it can be positive or negative, which
exactly. It doesn't have to be traumatic. And some of us can have positivity come out of the trauma. So there's, there's like a whole world of different things. But, when I think about, and I love the because you're not broken, I think we're so trained to focus on that negative, right? That, like you said, we have an emotion. Oh my God. So last week, my uncle passed, and I didn't, usually I'd put stuff on like regular Facebook, not just in our group, but and I didn't because, my cousins were mourning. It wasn't about me. And not that it wasn't about me and my grief, but I wanted to
give them a minute.
Right. And I didn't even know what it meant to me, because he and I weren't close. My cousin and I are very close. And he ended up with I always screw this up. Mesothelioma. Mesothelioma. And it comes from asbestos, and he was a contractor and he worked with asbestos, that thing. Right. Yeah. And it when he had it, when they found out he had it, she was very distraught. And I said, I promise you, I will be there for you.
Yeah.
If it's in Florida, if it's in New York,
Yep,
whatever, I'm
doesn't
going to be
matter.
there for you. So when it happened, she said, or when he went to hospice, she said, save your money, go on a nice trip. And after he passed, it was like, how am I going to feel?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
am I gonna be here and go, crap, I should have gone?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want that. So I went.
Yeah.
And I went for myself as much as her, right? But I didn't it didn't hit me. And I got frustrated with my wife because, she didn't think that it was important to me because I didn't say it was important. And I was like, well, you should have known. And, but she shouldn't have. That wasn't on her. That was my stuff. But it was also, I didn't know
Right.
how I felt.
Sometimes you don't know. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this actually is really important to me.
Yeah. And, I have amazing memories of when I was younger of him. He was an amazing guy. But I realized as they were talking about him now, I didn't know him.
Yeah.
But he was the last person in that generation on my dad's side.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like the end of a generation. And that's what stuck with me. And my knee-jerk reaction was, I didn't know how, I guess, I didn't know how to respond. And so I sat with it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, what am I feeling? And why am I feeling it? And, my first knee-jerk reaction was to kind of, say to my wife, way to, I really, you should have been there. And then I called her after I had time to think about it. And I said, that wasn't fair of me. Mm. And although when my next uncle dies, I said, well, you are coming because it will be important. Because now I know.
I realized that this actually
I needed you there. And I stayed
important.
with a friend, which was great, but not the same. Yeah. But anyway, so when we sit with things, I think it also gives us time to ruminate and see what that really means, right? I mean, it was like, okay, Uncle Howie passed, but then it was like, oh shit, Uncle Howie passed.
Right.
And
to figure out, is there a story that needs to get attached to the experience, or is it just reflecting on the experience? And sometimes there's stories that come up that aren't very helpful. And then there's stories that are really helpful. So it's worth, again, it's like, it's doing that assessment and figuring out what's going on. And I think it's important to know that there is never, so this is my other beef with typical self-help books right now, is there is this suggestion that if you just try hard enough or manifest hard enough or whatever, right, fill in the fancy languaging, then you're going to get to a place where you're going to have a problem-free life. I hate to break it to you.
You're never going to have a problem.
That is not one of the options, right?
No. That's like saying we're going to get out of here alive.
Right. Exactly. So
sorry.
So because we're not going to get there, right? What you want to do is to notice when there's too many problems, right? Or notice when you're not skillfully handling things. Yesterday morning, I'll use the example. I was on my way to work. We have contractors in our house. Our heat went out and they're now fixing it. So I'm bringing our new rescue dog to my office, and Steve is adorable. And at the same time, it just adds complexity to my day, right? Husband's out of town. We have there's all these moving parts and pieces. And I'm outside my office trying to get ready, need to grab breakfast before my first client comes. And I zip my scarf into my jacket.
Oh.
Right? Silly, stupid. But this is a scarf that my mom gave me, and I like it. And as I'm getting it out of the jacket while I'm still trying to make the dog pee before he comes into the office, right? And so it's like, you need to pee, you got to poop, right? I'm like futzing with this zipper and I rip a hole in my scarf.
Oh.
And the next thing I know, I'm like swearing. I'm just like, and then the next thing I know, I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Like, you are fine. These are very small problems, my friend, right? Like, so you ripped a hole in the scarf. It's this big. Nobody's even going to notice, and who cares, right? And maybe you needed a lesson in patience this morning, so this is why this happened, right? So I can try and make some meaning of it, or I can just notice and call myself out on like all these emotions are coming up, and all of this distress is coming up. And really like slowing down and figuring out what story do I want to attach to this moment? Do I want to attach the story of like, this is a bad morning, right? Or do I want to attach the story of I'm having a clunky moment, right? I'm disappointed at something. I was frustrated with myself because I got up late and then it sort of tumbled all of these other, moving parts and pieces. And instead of like giving myself all sorts of grief about it, I could decide, number one, what story did I want to attach? Okay, you got off on the wrong foot this morning. So assess the situation, give it a time limit instead of you're so, right? Just you got off on the wrong foot this morning. And then to ask myself, like, what do I need? But it's interesting, right? Like I teach this stuff all day long. I wrote a book that has 99 things to do. Like to manage yourself really well. Was I managing myself really well yesterday morning? Not so much. And so the point here is that it's a process, not a destination. Yeah. And the concept of psychological flexibility is a platform that then you can build your responses from, right? And so the platform is, I can manage my emotion. I can notice and manage my emotions. I can choose and do an assessment of whether or not my thoughts are moving me in a helpful direction or in a less helpful direction. I can take action. I'm not helpless. I'm not broken. So that's that foundational concept of psychological flexibility is lovely. It doesn't mean that there aren't storms that are going to happen outside the building.
Right. And I mean, and it always happens. And, you talk about waking up late. I had, it was a week ago Friday. And I was meeting with a new client. It actually is a kennel. So she said, bring the dogs. I was like, oh, okay. And then I said, well, I got to talk to my wife. Bring your wife. I said, well, she works during the day. And she said, oh, and then it turned out it was Good Friday. So Heather was off. So I brought the wife and the dogs. Never going to do that again.
Right. And not because they aren't awesome, but because you needed to be in business mode, right?
Because what happened was Piper and Skylar went outside and they played with the other animals, and Heather was out with them, and that was fine. So we were doing our business inside. Everything was great. But, Piper and Skylar were very aware that I was inside with them. They were meeting these new people, and they decided to bring a corgi out. Oops. And corgis are apparently known to be assholes. And Skylar, who is like my soul dog, and, she nipped the corgi.
Oh, no.
And so what happened was, I guess the corgi said something and Skylar said something, and then the corgi said something, and then Skylar got a little closer.
I've had enough.
And then the corgi said something, and then, Skylar nipped her.
Yeah.
And so, they come in and they're like, the woman who owned Skylar works there, and was like, who owned the corgi works there, and was like, yeah, she got hair. And I went, my baby did that? No. Well, meanwhile, I was supposed to leave at 2:30 because I had a 3:00 meeting. Completely forgot about the 3:00 meeting.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure my phone said, hey, 15 minutes, you have a meeting. I was focused on, and to me, family is more important than business anyway, right? Which, sorry, people, but so we get in the car on the way home, and it's like, hey, Iris, we're in the meeting, and I was like, shit.
Right.
So I sent a text, hey, running a little late. I'm really sorry. I'll be there by 3:30. So I ended up losing the whatever, but. So I got there at 3:30, explained what happened, said, I am so sorry. I'm never late. And when I tell you I'm never late, I am never late. Like, to me, I'm like 5-10 minutes early, always. So anyway.
Well, that's one of those core foundational principles, right, to being an entrepreneur, which is I think it's so interesting, this notion of foundational principles. And for you, it sounds like one of them is like, holy cow, I'm realizing you got off your game because there were too many moving parts and pieces for you.
Yeah. And my baby bit somebody. So I wasn't thinking about anything.
No, you're blown.
So that meeting, because that got pushed back, I had to push another meeting back, and then I had to push another meeting back because I meetings behind everything, and everybody else was understandable. And actually one of them was one of my team meetings. So that, that was okay. But I get it. And it was all, how I reacted to it. And my initial reaction was, what the hell is wrong with you? You're never late, and then it was like, I'm never bringing them to a meeting again, which technically I probably shouldn't do anyway, but it was a new kennel. We were going to, we're going to be taking them to them. The other piece of it was giving yourself grace.
Yes.
And as I was sitting in the meeting with these people, there was, there were two partners, and one I knew was fine, and I knew the other one wasn't. And in my phone call on the way home, one of them said, don't worry about it. We have a couple of hours. You're fine. And then in the call, the other partner said, so we have a 4:00 appointment. And I knew, at that point I knew, and I said, I get it. And we got off the call, and I sat there and I said, you have two choices right now. You can beat yourself because, you're late, which I wasn't going to give myself too much grace on that, because I should have, even though everything was going on, I still should have been cognizant of the time, because I am an entrepreneur and that stuff is really important, right? We need clients. Obviously, they probably weren't the right clients, but, and then it was like, completely understandable. You know what? And if people don't understand that, then maybe they are not the right fit.
Right. And I also think there's something to timing, right? Like in being an entrepreneur, there's timing, and there's sometimes somebody who on paper looks like they should be the right client, right? Mm-hmm. Just for whatever reason, the timing just is clunky every time, right?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, something silly. I consider it a timing issue when somebody I'm trying to get together with consistently has tech issues, right? It's like, okay. And they never have tech issues, right? But every time I'm trying to connect with them, they have tech issues. It's like, all right, maybe this isn't the right fit. And it's okay for things to not always be the right fit. But again, like going back and doing that assessment in the moment of what's working well, what isn't working so well, what are the emotions that are coming up, what's the story that goes with this? What's my next best move? And so that formula is one that I use just over and over again, right? And it sounds like you were able to use some of it in that disastrous meeting.
Yeah, I'm pretty self-aware. It took years. Let's just throw that out there. This didn't happen overnight. It really took a long time, but I'm very self-aware, and I'm very in tune with my feelings, and I'm also very in tune with my intuition.
Yeah.
So the fact that I was upset, but I wasn't, that upset, told me maybe the universe stepped in on that one.
Right.
Because I am never late. So okay. So you said 22 years ago, you started, did you work for, like, what made you decide to become an entrepreneur? What made you decide to start your own?
So I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad owned a variety of businesses. He bought and sold businesses. The primary business that he ran was actually a lighting business, and he retrofitted less environmentally positive and efficient lighting into more environmentally positive lighting. And this was kind of before this was a thing. So it was a neat and interesting business that he ran, and he had a couple of different iterations of it in a few different places. And so I'd grown up in an entrepreneurial family. My mom had helped my dad with the business, and the two of them really had a good partnership in terms of building the business for our family. So I'd always sort of thought about it. And then I was working in community mental health, which is phenomenal work, very important, all of those things. And it also just really did not pay the bills. So when I graduated with my doctorate, I had another community mental health job. And then I took on a part-time private practice. So I graduated in the end of August, and my practice started November 1st. And it took me, a couple of months to get the office wrangled and all of that kind of stuff, and furniture and all those basics. And my goal was to be able to pay my student loans and to periodically be able to go to Nordstrom's. So these were my grand business goals, right? And I was also hopeful that I would be profitable within 6 months, meaning that the small loan that I had taken out, I would be able to pay back. So I was able to pay back the small loan within 2 months, which was awesome.
Wow.
And then was able to pay off my student loans 10 years early.
Wow.
From running a side business. And I wanted to, the hobby end of my business worked well for a while. And then at some point it became really clear that I really wanted to do this full time. So once I became a mom, it was even more pressure to be able to do this full time. Sorry about the doggos in the background, barking.
Okay, they're sleeping right now.
But no, mine are barking.
No, I know, but normally that would set them off.
So took the leap, and it was really well worth it. So becoming an entrepreneur in the beginning was simply about flexibility and increased income. At some point it became about, this is really my calling. This is my work that I want to put out in the world.
That's awesome. And when I laughed about Nordstrom's, I just loved how, there are certain things that are important to us, right? And shopping at Nordstrom's is what's yours. So I got a chuckle out of that. And I think that's so interesting that it started out as one thing and then ended up as really your life calling.
Yep.
So there are people, that are listening to this that are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would you have for somebody who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur?
The first piece of advice that I would give is to get really clear on what it is what's the value that you're offering? What's the thing that you're bringing into the world that is unique and special and important and meets an existing need in the world? So getting clear on why you're doing this, I think, is worthwhile, and who you're going to benefit from doing it, in addition to how it's going to benefit you. And then from there, figuring out a way to get enough financial stability, because the initial stage of building a business tends to have some cost that comes with it, and it takes a minute to get income in. So having a really good financial plan, I think, is another pivotal first step.
Cool. And, it's so funny because when I started, I wasn't thinking of that piece of, how am I going to make somebody's life better? In the beginning, it was out of necessity. It was like, how am I going to make money? And I also knew that I was always going to come from a place of integrity, because I'd worked for people prior that really didn't have a lot of integrity. And I was like, I will never be that person. But as I grew, it was like, how am I making a difference in the world? And I have a not-for-profit. It's a small local not-for-profit that, I have, and I give back that way. And then somebody asked me yesterday, how do you give back to your clients? And I didn't have it was like an off-the-cuff question. I really wasn't ready for that answer. And I think that the more I thought about it, I give them the permission to be authentic. And a lot of people they don't get that. They don't understand that being able to be authentic and comfortable in your own skin, and people saying that is huge. I mean, I think I give, other things, but I think that that's one of the biggest things. And I had, I'm working with a coach, and he, in the beginning, was not very comfortable, and now he is. Now he's just super comfortable, and it's like I get giddy when I watch him now. I'm like, you are like nailing things in, one take, and you're just like so comfortable now that, I felt really awesome about that. But, I think there's a piece to that people don't think about, and it's, you said the financial piece, I think, is very important. But if they don't have that financial piece, and if they don't have that piece of how what can I do to make this world better, because they're kind of like thrown into it, I think, you can go one of two ways. You can go and run an ethical business and do, good for the world and your clients. And then you can also just go and want to make money and don't care how you make it. And,
and I would argue that there's kind of a third way to do it as well. So when I say, ask the question of what value are you bringing, doesn't necessarily, not everything has to be aspirational and make the world a better place. Sometimes it can be a tool that you're putting out, and that's the value that you're offering, right? To use a cooking metaphor, one of the treats I got myself for Christmas was a silicone baking mat that makes muffins. It's in the shape of a muffin tin. And I love to make muffins. This week's flavor was raspberry. They actually turned out, which was cool. Brand new recipe. But the silicone baking mat.
You have my address, so send some anytime you want to send food. But go ahead.
The silicone baking mat it's not solving any major world problem. It's not making anybody's life markedly better, but it's enjoyable. I'm happy to use it. It's from a small company. That's awesome, right? So there doesn't need to be like this association of, I feel like we have so much pressure right now about like, you have to be a servant leader. You have to give back. You have to make everybody's life better. And it's like, no, you need to add value, but it's okay if you're selling a commodity and that's the business that you have. That's actually okay.
Right.
So it's figuring out that balance between where are you adding value and how do you make it profitable? Because it doesn't really make any sense to become an entrepreneur and not actually have profit be a part of the consideration. At least in my opinion, I don't think
so. I mean, well, why? Yeah. I mean, if you're not making money, then you're going to have to get a job. And,
right.
And at this point, I'm unemployable. I think the last 10 guests I've had on, we laugh because we're like, we could never work for anybody. There's no
unemployable. It's amazing.
No way. I mean, could you imagine any of the dames working for anybody? I mean, there's no way.
They would be terrible at it.
They'd be terrible. Like, I know quite a few who would be like, yeah, no. But I, and I like that because there is a lot of pressure on, you have to run this kind of a business. And, for me, it's, if I can help people grow their businesses, if I can help people see the value inside themselves, because that's going to help them bring value out.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Then to me, I'm doing a good job. So for seasoned entrepreneurs, right, that have been doing this for a while. You've been doing this for 20 years. I'm sure there have been many. What's an obstacle that you've overcome that either you didn't see coming or
A while back, this is pre-COVID, I was in an absolutely stunning office in downtown Denver in a historic mansion. And I mean, the office was gorgeous.
Wow.
Original woodwork, 100-year-old mirror in my office. It was 480 square feet. It was huge and lovely. And just every day I walked into the building, I would just kind of go, oh my gosh, it's incredible. And I had my lease for another year and a half, right? This wasn't like 2 months or anything, year and a half, 18 months. And my landlord came to me and said, hey, Carrie, I'm pulling everybody's leases in the building. You have 45 days.
What?
Uh-huh. And there is a variety of reasons for this. And it was interesting to watch the variety of reactions. So one person just sort of tucked tail and left. Another person actually sued the landlord. They were pissed. The landlord and I had a good relationship. I had been taking care of the building a little bit for him when he was out of town. And he and I had a really honest and good conversation. But at the end of the day, it was a scramble. And real estate in Denver at the time was limited, especially for someone who needed an office like I needed. And that was one of those things where, I go in on a Monday and life is normal and I have my office and it's no problem. And I go in on Tuesday and all of a sudden I have 44 and a half days to figure out where I'm going to land my business. Yeah. Right. And so obstacles like this, I think just in general, sometimes obstacles are a difficult customer or, somebody doesn't do what they say they're going to do as a vendor or something like that. But a lot of times, I would argue that a lot of times obstacles are things that we have an idea that things are going in this direction and whew, suddenly you're going in that direction. Right. And so this is where that flexibility piece comes in. And it's also where having a good network is important. And I think this is critical as an entrepreneur, particularly if, like myself, and I believe like you, that we're solopreneurs, right? We are the point person. We are the person. And being able to have a network of trusted advisors, folks you can count on, people that you can call for ideas, so then you can mobilize that backup support when an obstacle that's based in something that's very unexpected comes up. Then you have some backup. So that was the example that came to mind when you asked that question. Yeah. And I landed in a really cool office, but it's 1/4 the size, but it has the sexiest feature. You want to know what it is?
What is it?
It's called a parking lot.
Oh, there you go.
Because I had been in Capitol Hill and my beautiful building had brutal street parking.
Wow.
So my office is smaller. I had to sell all of my furniture in my previous office because none of it fit, literally none of it.
Wow.
So, it was one of those things where like, whoa, okay, major change. What's my best approach here? Where's my system? Who can support me? What do I need to do? There we go.
Perfect. And like, that's the first time out of 40, I don't even know how many episodes we've done at this point, that's even been brought up.
Oh, that's so fun.
I know. So I love that because that's almost like getting fired. I mean, if you think about it, you have 45 days to get out. It's like, oh crap, what do you do? That's, wow. That's, okay. So folks, there you go. Utilize your networks and everything. So I want to get back to your book for a minute. When you wrote the book, what was the impetus in writing that?
Impetus was literally my clients coming in and handing me 300-page self-help books. And they're like, I can't get past 20, I can't get past page 10. I can't get past page 20. I need to know what to do. What would be helpful to me is to have you tell me, to have your voice in my head the next time this happens or that happens. And, to have an idea of what I should do. And so it was like, okay, we can do a little bit of a let's try this, not that kind of approach. And so I started writing the book. Iris, it took me a very long time to write this book and then get it published. It was a 12-year process. I got all the way through acquisitions with 2 big name publishing houses. And at the very last minute, sales would pull the book. So I got all the way through acquisitions, right? Like they said they wanted it. In one of them, I was picking out my cover. And then sales said, it's too hard to market. It can only be a single topic, right? It's too short on any one of the topics. You need to divide this into a single topic self-help book because that's what self-help books look like.
Wow.
And I kept saying, yeah, and my clients are telling me that they don't like them. And so the publisher who helped me this past year, Indie Books International, out of California, Henry saw the book and he's like, this is awesome. It doesn't look like a self-help book. It covers all of the things you need to know. You don't have to read about the problems. This is awesome. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am home. This is perfect. This is the answer I've been looking for.
That's awesome. But awesome.
It took a very long time. Yeah.
Wow. And, I've read a lot of those self-help books. I remember walking away because I was in therapy, like, I don't even know how many times in my life. And my very last therapist, Angie Michalak, she's up in Naperville, Illinois. I hope I'm allowed to say that, but she was the only one who made me do the work.
Right.
And I'll never forget, she goes, so how are you feeling about this? And I said, I'm feeling like you need to tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do. Like, why am I paying you? And she said, I'm not supposed to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you figure out what you're supposed to do. And I went, that's not what I'm paying you for. She said, that's exactly what you're paying me for. Yeah. And I remember I left that session. I was so pissed off because I didn't have my answer, right?
I've had this conversation, by the way, Iris.
I'm sure you have. And I was like so pissed off. And I got home and I was like, damn it, and I went back the next week and I said, I still haven't figured it out. And we talked it out. And she used to call it my light bulb moment. She said, she goes, your light bulb moments are so funny because you literally just see your eyes go, oh, because you're brilliant. You're not stupid. You know the answer already before you're even asking the question.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay. And then anytime she would say so, I'd be like, just give me a minute, like I would have to like really, but, and so she helped me heal a lot of things because it was all in me. And so it was pretty amazing. But I just had to share that with you because I remember I read all of the self-help books and I was like, what in the, no, this is not what, what was it? I don't know, the original one that came out, I love me, you love me, whatever the hell it was. And I remember reading that going, this is the dumbest piece of crap I've ever read. This is not, doing anything for me. So I love the fact that your patients were the impetus for this because they were like, these books are crap, And
these are the tips and the tactics that they have found to be helpful, right? These are the things that we've tried and they've done as homework assignments. I've used on myself. My husband, hilariously, one day I was having a tough day and he's like, I know this author and she has this suggestion, and he like breaks out one of my tips and I'm like, oh my gosh.
You married the right guy.
Oh, this is humbling. But yeah, so it's really, while it is certainly not our job as therapists to say, you should do this or you have to stop doing that, it's really our job to say, I see this pattern, or I've seen this pattern before. Here's how it ends. Is that the end you're looking for, right? Like if the client comes in and tells me that they're going to sleep with somebody who's married, I'm going to be the person who does say, help me understand what that choice is about. What are you looking for here? Because here, by the way, is how this pattern typically ends. You can count on a few things in the world, and there are some patterns that you can generally count on the ending. And this ending, it's almost never a good one, right? Like 99% of the time, it's not a great ending. So understanding that, what are you looking for? Because if you're looking for the good ending, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you're looking to avoid commitment, you're probably in the right place, right?
Yeah.
So that notion of just talking about what are the patterns that move you in positive directions? What are the patterns that you can predict are going to move you in negative directions? And a lot of what's in the book are commentary on patterns that aren't effective. But the majority of the book is, here's something that folks have found to be useful. Here's something that you can try in the moment. Give this a shot, right? So it doesn't tell you what to, like, it's not going to answer the question on what choice should I make, but it's going to give you kind of a platform to stand on of like, here's some concepts about communication that I could use and I could start applying today. Here's some concepts about relationships that might be pretty helpful today. So, yeah.
Cool.
Right. I appreciate you letting me come on and talk to your audience about it.
No, I think it's really cool. I'm actually, when this is done, I'm going to start pouring through it a little bit. So what is your differentiator? Like, why would somebody come to Dr. Carrie as opposed to a different, doctor?
I have been doing this a very long time is one differentiator. And the second differentiator is that I am very forward focused. So I am very interested, extremely interested in helping you figure out what is going well in your world, what is not going well in your world, and to help you identify the options to move forward. A lot of times I think therapy is about cycling in victimhood and feeling bad, and this happened to me and I feel bad about this, and it's sort of a circular process. One of the unusual things about me is my goal is to have clients actually graduate from working with me. So it's not just continual circling and circling. It's coming in, understanding what's going on and what has gone on and gotten you to this place, and then really getting a critical understanding of how do you move forward and what do you want to do next.
I love that. That is so awesome. Well, thank you. So we're at an hour. It goes so fast, right?
It goes so fast.
I know. I tell everybody they're like an hour. I'm like, I promise you're not even going to know that an hour went by. So thank you for taking the time out of your day, especially with all the things that you have going on there. And the dogs were really good. I'm just going to throw that out there.
They were very good boys.
They were very good boys. And I have to read your email about Steve because I saw part of it. So I'm going to read that as well. And then the last question that I ask everybody is, what lights your fire?
Helping other people feel great. Really. Yeah. I love to help other people feel great. And I love to feel great. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead. The point of this, in my opinion, the point of life is to enjoy the heck out of it, even when it's hard sometimes. It's true. I would agree with that 100%. So hang on. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone and I'll be right back to you.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging in again for an hour plus. Your support means everything. Our numbers are going up. Downloads are going up. I know it sounds like an oxymoron, but downloads are going up. And I'm just thrilled that I get to bring this to you every week, and you are gleaning nuggets and you're sharing it. And if you've gleaned any nuggets from this particular episode, please share it. Go check out Dr. Carrie's book, Self-Help on the Go. I'm seriously going to hit it as soon as I'm done here because it looks so cool. And I love that it's not something that you have to sit down and read from end to end. But thank you. And again, thank you for the people listening while you're working out. I feel like I'm getting stronger every week. And please like, share, subscribe. When you subscribe, you get a notification that a new episode is out. And again, I appreciate all of you. Go out, have a great week, and find what lights your fire. See you next time.